Welcome, everybody, to the latest
Hello?
evolution of Mondays in MMORPGs. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Renfell, and you probably already know the other person on the
I'm
video.
Elloa.
Elloa.
Hello. Hello,
So
everyone.
she's been around a while. She and I have done videos in the past together. I believe we did. Have we done two series or just the one? I know we did the Pillars of. Was it Pillars of Gameplay?
Pillars of gameplay. And it was very fun, so I'm really excited to be on the series here.
Yeah,
It's
that's been a
going to be
that was
amazing.
that was a couple of years ago. So we had to
Yeah.
do a refresher and come back to do something different. So, in the previous show that we did together, we were focused on things that related to the Saga of Lucimia, which is the MMORPG that we're both working on. But this show, Mondays in MMORPGs, is a little broader in scope. Now, those of you who are long term fans of the show, originally it started off as a series of videos and associated blog posts over at the Saga of Lucimia website, and then it evolved into a podcast, which I was running through my Patreon. And then I said, you know what, it's kind of boring just sitting here doing these by myself. I need somebody else to do these with me. Voila, this is where Ello
I'm,
comes
I'm
in.
glad that you choose me. That's cool.
So we're going to dive back into a variety of topics. These shows, we're kind of just doing this for the first time. The format might change as we get going along, but the overall theme is just going to be lots of things relating to MMORPGs in general. We may talk about some stuff that relates to the Saga of Lucimia, but as a general rule, we're going to just be talking about the genre and the industry as a whole. And today's topic, since it's sort of relevant to MMORPGs, even though what kicked off the controversy was not necessarily an MMORPG, it's definitely a multiplayer game. But the recent controversy over this Hearthstone um, player being basically banned from playing for a year, having his prize money stripped away, and um, basically being told that he's, in deep doo doo because he made a political statement on a stream saying, he was basically going in favor of the Hong Kong uh, um, protesters who are going on right now and free Hong Kong and etc. And you have, on the one hand, you have people criticizing Blizzard for making what many consider to be a political decision because they say that Blizzard is bowing to the Chinese, um, uh, not the critics per se, but just their censors. And on the other hand, you have people saying, well, but technically this person signed an agreement where you're not supposed to make any sort of political or sexual or religious statements in a public setting. So I know from my perspective, and then I'll let you dive into your side of things, Eloa. But I can look at pretty much every MMORPG out there has some sort of a play nice policy or an EULA that you're required to sign when you start playing that game. And when you sign that, some of the very basic rules are no hate speech, no religious arguments, no political arguments, no sexualized content, no porn, nothing that would be overly offensive. The same thing goes for forums. I know this morning somebody had, one of the staff at mmorpg.com had written a rant against Blizzard, calling Blizzard out, and someone went and copy pasted the terms of service that mmorpg.com themselves require people to sign before they start posting in the forums. And in the rules, it specifically states you're not allowed to make political, religious, or sexual statements. Anything derogatory or inflammatory, anything that nature will not be tolerated, and you will be reprimanded and or banned from their forums. So whether or not you're looking at an MMORPG, a forum, a game like Hearthstone, in this case, you have a someone who's in the public eye representing a company and they're on a sponsored stream being paid money to do something for this company, and then they come out and make this political statement when it clearly says in their contract that they're not supposed to do that. I kind of look at that and go, well, I understand where people are coming from thinking that Blizzard is bowing to the wishes of Chinese censors, but at the same time, these are rules that have been long established throughout many, 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 many industries. And I don't really think that it's Blizzard bowing to the Chinese. I think it's just you're not supposed to talk about those kind of things. You're not supposed to make political statements, religious statements. You're not supposed to make hate speech or any of those things when you're playing games and or posting on forums. So why would it be any different when you are, especially if you are representing a company in the public eye? I don't know. What's your opinion? Go.
Yeah, the thing is that I try to not have strong opinion regarding that kind of affair, especially when I do not have a deep understanding of the situation. And in this case, I believe that I do not have a deep understanding of the situation because I do not know all the consequences and all the backstage stuff that is happening and that people do not know. And I think that everything is a little bit more complex than we think. So we can react with our hurt and say, oh, this is not fair and we should fight for freedom and blah, blah, blah. And but I think that things are a little bit complicated. And this is something that I truly believe and I try to apply on my stream. I try to be as inclusive as possible for everyone. And as I want to be as inclusive as possible for everyone, I know I need to avoid certain topics, especially political topics, because it will offend someone at some point. It will hurt a person. And I don't really care about this kind of stuff in my stream. And I believe that this is not place when we play video games. It should stay area of neutrality so everyone can feel comfortable playing games together. And because of that, we still need to stay relatively neutral. And I believe that a company need to be neutral. I cannot take a political stance. So people interpret that Blizzard is taking a political stand by banning that person, but maybe, like you just described, Blizzard is trying to not take a political stance or just like neutralize the political stance that has been taken, because things are more complex. They have deals with China, they have deals with Western Europe, they have the image to preserve with the players, etc.
I think
On the other
the
side,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
the last point, I think that Blizzard at the moment is in a bad position, and it's very much in trend to be mad at Blizzard.
Hmm. I don't disagree with the last because I know people like to kind of poop on them ever since the event last year when they like, what? Don't you people have mobile phones? Um,
Yeah.
but so I can kind of look at this from the perspective of, you know, us having a small company. Um, if you look at, I agree with what you just said in regards to, it could very well be that all Blizzard is really doing is basically holding someone accountable to the rules that have been set in place for decades. These are not new rules. These are not new contracts. These are terms that everyone has signed to. Like I was mentioning earlier, you sign every time you sign an EULA, dig through it. Most people don't bother to read it, but somewhere in every single EULA that you sign to play an online game in an online space, you will find a section that prohibits you from making any sort of political, religious, or hate speech or any sort of comments that are going to be inflammatory, derogatory, ruin someone else's fun, and or ruin the image of the company whose product you are participating in. So I don't really think it's a case of Blizzard caving into censors. However, preservation of image is very important, and I think that there's something that a lot of people are failing to understand, which is that in the last decade, the market, and this doesn't apply just to MMORPGs, this applies to the movie industry as well. China has become a major marketplace for revenue for Hollywood studios, for game companies, and etc. They have a massive audience, and movies often will have a separate edit that is released just in China because it needs to be different for that market because of the censors that they have in place. So they will release a movie in the United States that they will also release in China, but they will be slightly different versions because they want to make sure that they're making money in both markets. Like you were
And World of
just
Warcraft had been censored in China.
Yes. And you also just said something that's very important that I think a lot of people don't realize is that Blizzard has contracts with not just China, but also with the European Union and et cetera. And every different market, every region has its own set of rules and regulations that a publisher and or developer must abide by if they're going to put forth a product in that particular market. So I don't really think it's a case of Blizzard per se bowing to censorship. It's just that, let's face it, China is a massive market. It's very hard to get into the Chinese market, especially with video games. They have a very strict censorship in place, and for a while they weren't even accepting any new games. So the fact that Blizzard is in that market, they're working with developers in the mobile market there. It's something where it's a double-digit set of percentile revenue stream for them. You really don't want to piss off that revenue stream as a company, and at the same time, if you want to keep your product relevant on a global scale, you have to be willing to be global. And I think that's something that within the last 10 years, a lot of people from the US side of things, anyway, I can speak from the US because I'm from there. For a long time, the United States kind of dominated the global market space, so we could get away with making statements like, what we say goes. But that's really not the case anymore. We have these other economic forces at play where a company like Blizzard has to listen to what the Chinese marketplace is saying because that's a as big or bigger revenue stream than the North American market. And even though they might have started out in North America, they are no longer just a North American company, they are a global company. But at the end of the day, going back to your final point on preservation of image, going back to what I was saying earlier, being a small company, I can tell you right off the bat that if I had a contract with a streamer and that streamer went on a stream and publicly said they support Nazis or publicly said that they think homosexuals should be chemically castrated, I would immediately sever ties with that streamer. I would tear up the contract. I would not pay them. Like they would have broken their contract by doing something in a public setting that they agreed not to. So I think that's just my point of view.
But that will be seen in a better way in the eyes of the public because most of people will agree with that statement.
It's a little more
While
extreme.
here, yes, while here, the statement that Blizzard is taking is not. They have taken the side of the let see me what I'm doing,
Yes.
the villain. So the public, according to the public opinion, Blizzard is siding with the bad guys versus the good guy, which is defending independence, and so they see as a like a threat to free of speech and the humanity, the humanism point of view, etc.
What you
But the
just
thing
said
is, a
something.
political stance is a political stance. It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not.
You just said something, going back to the humanities thing. Somebody mentioned earlier that what's going on in Hong Kong is not a political issue, it's a human rights issue. And yes and no. I mean, if you really do pay attention to what's going on in Hong Kong, there are some human rights elements to it, but it is very political in nature as well. It started off political and then it's gotten, with violence and stuff going on. Um, it's tricky when you're not living there. So I live, I've lived in various places around the world, and I spend a lot of time in Mexico because my wife is from here. And as a travel blogger for a decade, going to lots of different places and living in countries where they don't necessarily have the same freedom of speech that Western countries have, and that the first world countries have, um, it's tricky when people talk about how so and so should be allowed to say something because in their country they can say that and there's no repercussions for that. But if you're from the country where something is going on, if you say something like that, I mean, a perfect case is they just arrested this kind of crazy. I'll just call her crazy. She was a little crazy, Iranian um, Instagrammer who had a bunch of plastic surgeries to look like Angelina Jolie, and she did a lot of like prank style videos and stuff on her Instagram. And she eventually was just, I think, last week arrested because she was making videos that the Iranian government considered to be corrupt. Those videos were corrupting the youth. She was making money off of immoral content
Mm.
and so on and so forth. And as someone who has made a living off of Instagram in a country where I am allowed to say and do what I want for the most part, um, you know, it's tricky when you look at a situation like that and say, well, if she was doing that in Canada or the United Kingdom or Australia or Austria or France or New Zealand, it would have never been an issue. But because she's in a
Mm.
country that has such strict censorship rules, and I think that's what's coming into play with a lot of people looking at what's going on with Hong Kong and China. So it's a delicate situation, and I think those of us who live in countries where we have freedom of speech often don't realize what it's like for people who live in countries where you don't necessarily have the same freedoms.
Now
Um,
it's raised the question: should a gaming company, or let's say artists in general, or people that are sharing a message to the crowd and the public, should they take political stance, or should they absolutely stay neutral no matter what? And this is very difficult
it
because
is, yeah.
everyone in the world has an opinion about what should be done about the world. And even things like abortion, which is a broad subject, is political in some way. And what do we want? Do we want the gaming company to be absolutely neutral and never defend the rights of the oppressed, never defend the right of, all those things that will participate to make the world a better place? Or should they stay absolutely neutral to welcome everyone, including the people that really are against abortion or against, all that kind of things? Because they are gamers too, and maybe the gaming platforms need to be able to welcome all kind of person, all kind of gamer, regardless of their opinion and regardless of the fact that some people disagree or agree with certain stance. This is very difficult because, in a way, who will be the people that can make the world change? Take a stance, say, no, we disagree with that. This is unfair. We want the world to be changed. We want the mentality to change. And media, gaming developers, movies, singers, whatever, have this possibility and maybe this responsibility of spreading new message and changing the mentality. Or should they not? That's, I think, maybe the key
It's
question.
tricky. I can also, from a personal standpoint, um, working in the travel industry for a long time and as a blogger, videographer, photographer, etc., I can say that there were some instances in some countries where I chose not to talk about the problems that were happening in those countries while I was still in those countries. And I waited
Hmm.
until after I had left to talk about those things on my blog and or on social media. And the reason for that being there's just too much of a risk to your personal well-being.
Hmm.
And this is where it comes into play about whether or not you're willing, either as an individual or as a company, to take a stand. Because watching some of the Hearthstone casters say that they're quitting and they're going to quit, and people at Blizzard doing walkouts and saying, "Well, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to work at Blizzard anymore."
Hmm.
We've had a few people from our World of Warcraft Classic Guild who canceled their World of Warcraft subscriptions yesterday and the day before in protest. It's very easy to say, well, I'm going to protest in this way because there's no repercussions to that. There's no repercussions if you walk out of your job or you quit a subscription. It's a financial issue. There's really no life-threatening thing going on. But if
Hmm.
you're in a country where the things are happening, where the bad things are happening, and if you decide to take that risk to comment on those things while you're in that country, you're not just risking financial success or your financial well-being or your job. You're also risking life and limb. And I think that's where every company and or individual has to make up their own mind about whether or not something is worth taking a stand for, in terms of risking life and limb, or if you're just risking, because again, it's easy to sit in somewhere like the United States and criticize, um, someone because you're in the United States and you can very easily criticize without there being any repercussions. But if you're actually in some place where the atrocities are happening, much trickier. So it is a good conundrum, and I think that as a small company, I would, obviously we're doing everything on our own, so we're not working with publishers and etc. But I think it's something that as a business owner, I would definitely be extremely cautious about, risking the well-being of my employees and not just their physical well-being, but also the well-being of their paychecks, by making political stands as a company. Um, but that's just a personal opinion. I'm a big believer that politics and religion, just as much as I don't talk politics and religion with my family members and my wife, for example, um, I try very hard to keep politics and religion out of my gaming. Like if I'm logging into World of Warcraft, I'm logging into Azeroth. I don't want to hear about Trump. I don't want to hear about Brexit. I don't want to hear about all these other things. I'm there to, to be a dwarf and,
Hmm.
follow the quests in the Explorers League and go kill dragons and troglodytes and have fun in another world as opposed to continually hearing about what's going on in the real
And
world.
maybe for the people that really want to change the world and really want, deep in their heart, they want to make the world a better place, maybe sometimes subtlety is more efficient that take a stance. And I'm thinking maybe like a video game company can, shape their worlds and put some nice message and philosophy inside the game itself. They do not always need to take
A political
a
stand.
politics stand on the stage and put themselves, out at risk of losing contract or losing customers and such. And they will be able to spread a message much more better. Like let's say how the Blizzard have done Overwatch. They have heroes from every origins or with different sexual orientation and all that kind of thing. And I believe that this will have more impact on people than to take a public stance in a conference, for example.
Hmm.
Why? Because everyone that is playing the game just because they want to kill stuff and they want the game and the gameplay will be somehow influenced. And in a way, even the person that are really, let's say homophobic, for instance, maybe they will start to, you know, like their mind will slowly be changed because they're playing a game like this. It will maybe change the mentality on a deeper level than just making a political speech.
I don't disagree. There's a lot that companies can do to make their games more inclusive and also to, like you said, have it in there in such a way that it just becomes normal to be associating with people, regardless of their religion or their sex or political points of view, because you're all just playing a game together and having fun together. And so it doesn't really matter what other people's
Mhm.
views are because you can just have fun. So that is something that's very, very good to think about, and I think that's a good way to segue out of that very heavy topic that we opened with and talk about something a little lighter. So I want to
Yeah.
say congratulations. I know you just got nominated to the ESO Stream Team. I believe that's what they're calling it.
Yes,
So
thank
woohoo!
you.
And I know that's something where you originally that's how you built your online career was by being an ESO streamer on
Yeah.
YouTube. And then eventually, of course, as time went on, you got onto Twitch, and I know you've done a lot of work for us, but you've also done a lot of different variety things, and now you're doing more
Hmm.
real life streams, and you're doing lots of different games. I know you've done Final Fantasy 14, you've done Overwatch, you've done Destiny 2, you've done World of Warcraft, you've done, am I forgetting anything?
Guild
Guild
Wars
Wars
2 as
2.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and I think you're part of their affiliate program as well, correct?
Yes. So
So
Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online now.
so I know you quit your job 2 years ago or a year and a half ago to full-time stream.
Yeah. In July last year.
So it's been a little over a year.
Yeah.
Um, how do you feel after a year of doing this? Is it what you thought it would be? Is it more than what you thought it would be? Have there been things that you've had to adjust to? Because I can think back when I first started blogging, for example, it was 2010. And at that point, like digital nomad was not a thing. Everybody would call it location independence. And I happened to be
Hmm.
living in Cancun. I'd lived in Bulgaria. And when I did it, it was so new that it really hadn't taken on a life of its own. And of course, in the last decade, blogging has become this international phenomenon. And I think kind of a similar fashion, streaming started off, what, half a dozen years ago, and now it's this mainstream thing. And I know I had my opinions, which I could talk about later, about the blogging industry, but I'm interested about how you feel about streaming now that you're doing it full time as opposed to when you were just doing it part time.
Yes, a lot of things have changed, and I had to adapt and rethink a lot of the things that I've done. So when I started full time, I was streaming a bit like the continuation of what I was doing before being full time,
Hmm.
but just changing my schedule. But just change the schedule, change everything because you don't reach the same people. I started to play different games as well because it was very important for me to not being enclosed in just one single game. And then, well, I was doing my things, and at some point I had a very big existential crisis, which is maybe out of streaming, but where I was really reconsidering what is my purpose, what I'm doing here on Earth. I was thinking maybe outside of the box. And I had, because I was going through that, rethink what I really wanted to do as a streamer. What was my goal? What was my purpose? Do I just want to play video games and get paid for that? Is it what I want to do? No, that's not what I want to do. I
I think
really
that's
had,
what many people want to do, but you have a different
yeah, that's what
vision.
I mean, but that's not exactly what I want to do. What I want to do is to create a safe space for people where they can relax and chill, be authentic. I want to create connection with person. I know that especially in the gaming community, but not only, but that's my domain and my kingdom, let's say. There's a lot of people that are stressed, that have anxiety, that feel lonely, that go through hard time. And we are living in this internet bubble where we can connect with people from all over the world, find different culture, find different kind of person, different age, different social environment. We do not really know what everyone are going through. But what I know, and this is something I truly believe in, it's a little bit philosophical, but whatever, that's who I am. I really believe we are all brother and sister, all of us. Doesn't matter what we're doing. And we all want the same thing, which is finding happiness and be loved for who we are. And that's what I want to honor. That's what I want to create through my stream. And streaming is just a tool, it's just a space to allow this to happen. And video games are just one of the tools that I'm using as well to reach people. But I don't want to just promote video game or just honor the video game itself. What I want to do is create connection with people and reach human beings and have a heart-to-heart talk with other person.
Yeah,
Voilà.
it's a modest goal. I know that for many people, the primary reason they get into streaming is because A, they love video games, and B, they want to make money at it. Um, so I know many of these companies have affiliate programs, which most everyone is a part of if they're doing any sort of professional level streaming on a full-time basis. Um, I can say that from my perspective as a blogger, when I first started blogging, it was very easy to make money as a blogger back in 2010 to like 2012 because there was no one else doing it. But then as the market got more saturated, everybody else started seeing, oh, look at these people out there making all this money traveling around the world doing this cool thing. I want to do it. And then more and more people started doing it and became more and more challenging to find income streams. And I can say, for example, I've got a friend of mine who started off like I did, blogging and selling ebooks, which is he and I were coming up at the same time. And then by about 2013, 2014, ebooks no longer were making as much money as they used to because there were so many other people who were now also selling ebooks on the internet. So then he started, I went into public speaking and consultations and social media marketing, and he went in a different direction and started doing tours through his brand in India. And since then, he has now, I think now he's doing like 18 tours a year, um, So he's doing a couple a month, I believe, and he's doing them in like India, Romania, Mexico, all these different places. And he's got, 8 to 10 people who come every time he does tours. But he still blogs, but he's so far beyond just blogging anymore that now he's also doing tours, and he does a little bit of public speaking, but he's just doing his own little thing that started off as blogging but then went and became this other thing. When you first started getting into streaming, and I know going back to most people in streaming are there to do it to make money. I know with these affiliate programs and etc., they're there to help people make money as streamers, but you don't have to give any numbers because I know that's a tricky subject for a lot of people. But the way your particular setup is working, are you making the primary amount of your income from like sponsorships or affiliate sales or directly through Twitch? Because I know it's
No,
different for everybody.
it's really my community that supports me.
Got you.
That's the main, like from far. The affiliate program, they are more there to support you, to help you grow, but not giving you money directly. They are not making so you make money out of it. They are giving you tools, so in a sort of how can I say, visibility or recognition to help you grow, because by growing your channel you are reaching more people, and then you are
It's a
attracting more
win-win
people
for
to buy
everybody.
the
Yeah.
game. And in the case of Elder Scroll Online, the program has worked extremely well, because it really changed. Elder Scroll Online was not extremely popular on Twitch. Not saying that it has anything to do with they sale or how many people were playing, but on Twitch it was not especially as a particularly popular game. The affiliate program and the drop system that they have. So some weekends when you're watching streams, you receive loot in game. And that really, really helped to grow certain streamer, but also a feeling of community and the visibility of Elder Scroll Online on Twitch, which obviously is a good promotion for the Elder Scroll Online, but also help the streamers to grow and grow their stream, and they get partnerships. So the streamers are motivated to stream more Elder Scroll Online because it worked well for them. And you see, it's a kind of win-win-win situation for ZeniMax, for the streamer, and for the viewer. So everyone gets something out of it. It's a perfect symbiotic relationship, and this is very smart. So they have done an amazing job, and I think it has served everyone on that regard. So congratulations to
Yeah, I
them.
think it works very well. I mean, looking at how they've done it, um, going back to blogging from the travel industry, and a lot of the early days we used affiliate programs which were very similar, especially when it came down to ebooks and stuff. You could get involved with someone who was selling a guidebook, for example, and you could do a sponsored book for them, and then they would promote the book, you would promote the book, and there was this symbiotic. Everybody's winning because they're getting more sales and more audience members. You're growing your audience, and you're getting commissions off of the sales. So I think it's very important. Um, Having worked as an influencer and then also having worked from the other side of paying influencers in the travel space, I think it's very important to make sure that there is a fair system in place to reward people for, promoting your games. I think it was, I want to say a couple of years ago, and I think Nintendo was very hardcore on YouTube, for example, about not wanting to allow people to make any sort of revenue off of doing Let's Play videos.
Which is
Um,
stupid.
which is stupid because it's free publicity. These are people who love the Nintendo
Exactly.
product. They love playing these games. They're making these videos for free. And yet at the corporate level, you have someone who's going, well, that's not right that they're making money off of our products. We need to shut that down. Well, now you've just, kind of pissed off and alienated this community base who previously loved your products and loved your games, and now you're telling them that, you know, you're a bad person for making videos of our games. I think it's much better to have this approach of like what ZeniMax is doing and what ArenaNet is doing, where let's have this symbiotic relationship. I think it also works a lot better the way they're doing things now as opposed to what used to happen, say a few years ago, where they would only work with the highest profile streamers, and they would
Yes.
they would offer them, say, here's a $50,000 paycheck to do this really big sponsored ad. You see this, I think, more on YouTube than you do necessarily on Twitch these
They were
days.
doing it on Twitch
Yeah,
because
also
every
on
time
Twitch, but
they were releasing a new expansion, you could see that in several games they were inviting different streamer from other games. So they will stream. That will piss off the community, the loyal community that is working all year long to stream Elder Scrolls Online or whatever other game it is. And then there's this big release, so it's the day for everyone is excited, and then you have this big streamer that's stealing all the view. I'm kidding. It's not really stealing, but
but
you
it
see what I
is,
mean.
it was, I think companies are realizing now that it's much better to work with everyone who's passionate about your
Yes,
product, as
exactly.
opposed to this one guy who's got 500,000 views or 500,000 followers just because he has big numbers. Because yeah, he might get you some sales, but in the long run, and I can say there's a lesson I learned a long time ago from working with the Costa Brava Tourism Board under Jama, in out of Girona in Spain. I think he has since, I believe he has since on a leave. He's getting his PhD now, but he worked with the tourism board for more than 20 years. And something he said to me the very first time we worked with him always resonated with me, which was he was far more interested in building relationships with the influencers and content creators that were coming in, regardless of the amount of followers they had, because over the course of 10 years of working with influencers, they were twice nominated as the world's best tourist destination. They won the European um, travel destination. I can't remember the exact name of the award, but they won the there was a big online marketing award that they won. They beat out EasyJet. They beat out these major cruise lines like Caribbean Cruises. They beat out these companies that were spending hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising campaigns by doing a simple little blogger campaign with 6 or 8 bloggers that went off and did this European food trip between Costa Brava and I want to say Emilia Romagna is the name of the Italian region. Anyway, the point was, they have since, Costa Brava has since worked with thousands of content creators around the world in all sorts of different languages, in all sorts of different genres, whether it's, mom and husband and wife bloggers, family bloggers, old, retired people bloggers, single gay traveler bloggers, and all these different people. And as a result, they have saturated the market with how amazing Costa Brava is as a destination, as opposed to, say, my favorite of all time is a few years back, and I brought this up in one of my presentations. The state of Florida paid the hip hop artist, oh, he's from Cuba, and now I'm blanking on his name. Pitbull, is his name. They paid him $1 million to be their official ambassador for the state of Florida for tourism. The campaign failed miserably. The head of tourism was fired. The government basically cut their budget by about 20 million off the top of my head. Basically, just the campaign failed miserably because what they did is they said, well, here's this guy who's got millions of followers, and he's an international hip hop artist. Let's pay him a lot of money to represent our state and bring tourism board in. And at the end of the day, what they didn't realize is nobody gives a hoot if Pitbull is recommending a destination. They want to watch Pitbull videos because he's got half naked girls and he's throwing cash around and he's living the life of a hip hop artist. That's why people follow him on that platform. So I think it's a very similar approach where the companies are looking at that these days and going, just because this streamer has a whole lot of followers doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get the best results for our game. Because here are these 5,000 passionate people who love our
Exactly.
product. They might only have 10 people who watch their stream, but those 10 people will definitely buy the product, and they're going to have fun doing it because they're playing with their best friends. So
Yeah, I
kudos.
think it's work. Maybe a combination of both is nice, but I truly see the result, and it was obvious how it was working. So I think it's really nice, and I think in general, and this is something everyone can think of, it works a lot better to think about creating a win-win situation with other people rather than
Sure.
thinking we are in competition with each other. And I believe if you take that stance, you will see that it's flourish a lot easier and better for everyone, and everyone is gaining something out of it. While when you are putting yourself into a competition mindset, then you are always hostile and suspicious, and on your guard with others, and it's not a nice atmosphere, and it doesn't create anything really good. So you're trying to get the blankets to yourself only. No, it doesn't work really that way. I think the world in general, and it's shown to me constantly with example, it works a lot better when you're thinking and reminding yourself there's enough sun for everyone.
I think that's also I've tried to take that approach with our game. Um, Whenever somebody has mentioned these other products that one could consider to be competition to the title that we're creating, I look at that. I don't look at them as competition. I look at them as I'm going to play that game. I love what they're doing. And so I'm wholeheartedly, like, people have mentioned this in our Discord. They're honestly surprised that I'm willing to promote these other products that are technically competition for our product. And I look at it and go, why would I care? Because at the end of the day, there are people, I'm the perfect example of this. I play lots of different games because I'm a gamer. A gamer does not, yeah, you're the same way. So a gamer, you understand this mentality. A gamer doesn't just pick one title and stick with that title. They play lots of different games. And we should all be celebrating the fact that we're in this golden age of game production where we have all of these amazing, not just MMORPGs, but we have all these online opportunities that exist these days where people can go online and make friends and have these social interactions, these online relationships. I can remember when I first started gaming, and you and I first started around the same time in the late 90s, in terms of the online gaming, it was considered like you were a freak, like, because you preferred to stay home and interact with people online. Like, everyone, I remember people would tell me, like, you should go bowling with your friends, or you should go do, go camping and all this stuff. It's like, I do those things, but I prefer to stay home and have these online friends who, and I've had friends now for that I've been gaming with for 20 years. And I've met many of them in real life on occasion, but some of them I've never met, and I've played with them for 15, 20 years, but we still have meaningful relationships. And now no one thinks anything of it because everyone's on PlayStation Network or Xbox Live, or they're playing, you know, Call of Duty or EverQuest or World of Warcraft or Elder Scrolls Online. It's not even, nobody even thinks about it anymore, about having online friendships. It's just become this normal thing. And I think that's something to be celebrated, as opposed to, trying to say, well, that game's going to take customers away from my game, so I want them to fail, or we need to do better than them. And of course, as a business owner, obviously we need to drive sales and there are bottom lines that we have to worry about. But I look at it and go, everybody loves games. Why can't we all support each other and have fun together and play each other's titles? I think that's a far better thing than to say, that person's from ArenaNet, they should die. It's because they're a
Yeah,
competing company or competing game.
exactly. And the developer in general are in that mindset that they are friends, they like their game. I've seen a tweet not long ago about Final Fantasy 14 and World of Warcraft, or Blizzard and Square Enix. They have organized a visit for each
For
other.
the
So they have
the devs
visits.
at the different, yeah, that was so cool. Like,
Yes, they visited each other's studio because they respect their work. It's two games. You can think that Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft are currently in competition, and maybe they are, but the developers love each other and they are playing the game of each other, and they are celebrating the release of the new expansion of each other. It's only the die-hard fans that get really offended and defensive to defend their title harshly, and no, there's not such a thing. And I believe that there's room for everyone. You will play a game for certain reason, and maybe it's a game that suits you, maybe it doesn't suit you, and you are someone that, I don't know, prefer heavy PvP or whatever, and so you will prefer a different style of game. That's fine. So games are made for different person or for different moods. That's why I like to play several games, because sometimes I will want to do one activity and sometimes I will want to do something else, and I will not be always in the same mood. So I truly believe that there's space for everyone to grow. Of course, people need to do a good job. They need to produce a good game. They need to do a nice promotion of their game. It will not fall from the sky. But there's no
no matter how
really,
much wishing.
Yeah, exactly. But competing? No, if you're doing a good job, there is no real
I
competition,
love
actually.
that aspect of it. If you're doing a good job and you're creating a
Yeah,
good game, it doesn't matter because everybody's going to want to play it, even your competing developers.
yeah.
Um, if you're creating something that's fun, everyone's going to love it regardless of who's actually behind it. I think that's something that's very important. So I do have a question right now. What are you playing right now that is something that is giving you the most enjoyment?
Right
Is it
now,
a single player title or an online title?
no, I never stick with single title because I the reason why I've become a gamer it's because one day I played Anarchy online and I discovered I could speak I the same day I spoke with a Californian person and a person from Persia. I was saying, oh my god, I can meet people from all over the world.
Hmm.
I was sold, and that's how I became a gamer. So no, I play online games, and even if I sometimes play online games on my own, and I enjoy to play them by myself, I like the fact that it's a living world where there is other people, and the day I want to tag along with someone else, I can do it. So right now, I play Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2, and World of Warcraft, both classic and retail. And each of those games for different reason. I really like the stories in Elder Scrolls Online. I absolutely adore the art style in Guild Wars 2. I like the combat system in World of Warcraft, and it's my first game, so
Yeah,
like
got a
there's this relation with
combination of
it.
everything going on.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
I've switched over up until World of Warcraft Classic dropped. I was playing Lord of the Rings Online, um, Star Wars: Old Republic, and we had done some. We did the most recent EverQuest 2 progression server. Um, but since I'm a rarity in the world in that I never really ever played World of Warcraft when it launched because I was too busy doing EverQuest 2. And I know I came and tried to play retail with you and your European community last year, like before Battle for Azeroth came out. I think I played for 6 weeks or so. And I couldn't really get into the retail experience that well. It was just, for me, it was too easy. I got lost in it because it was just, I could literally
mhm.
watch an episode of a show and play it. And I was always looking forward to the classic dropping, but there's two reasons I'm enjoying classic really a lot right now. One is obviously because um, it's far more group based, so you have to have friends to play it with, but also because I finally got my wife to play games with me. She had dabbled in retail over the last few months just to kind of learn how to control the character and etc. But she never really got into it. And since she started playing Classic about, I want to say about 3 or maybe it's been about a month now, 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago, um, she has since gotten to the point where she now asks me if we can play. And it's not a lot because she's a full-time student and she's got all of her classes and lots of homework and etc. But we're playing 2 to 3 times a week, usually for about an hour, hour and a half here and there. But it's really funny because um, one of the first things I noticed was that the very first session we played, it was almost 3 hours, and we got done, and she went, "What? I thought we'd only played like 45 minutes." And I was like, "No, we've been playing for 3 hours." She was like, "That's not right." And I was like, "That's what happens when you get sucked into these online worlds." And then the next morning, I'm usually the first one up. And I got up at 6:30 and the bed was empty and I was like, that's weird. And I go in the kitchen. She already had made coffee. Coffee was ready, breakfast was ready, and she was like, "Let's get coffee and let's go log in and play." And I was like, "What's going on? Like the world has
this,
changed right
this is
now."
amazing,
But
and that's when you really get into something. If you
the
play with your partner, it's
yes,
amazing.
the favorite thing that's happened now. There's two things. One is that she has come to hate Murlocs like everyone does, and she runs around making the Murloc noise every once in a while. I'll just hear her in the kitchen going, which is hilarious. But then, so we never died. We played like 6 sessions in retail, never died. Would pull 5, 10 mobs, no problem. So the very first time we ran into a Murloc camp in Goldshire, outside of Goldshire, she pulled like 5 mobs. And I told you this story the other day because she's playing a paladin and I have a mage, and I literally like sheeped one, and I was trying to freeze everything and ran out of mana, and I just took off. I was like, we're gonna die, run, let's run. And so she was very still kind of new to it, trying to run away, and she got snared, and I didn't. So I ran away and I survived and she did not, and she got very upset that she died, but also that I left her behind. But um, the um, the death experience was something she had never it never happened to her in retail, and in the classic experience, she has now died. I think we've died a total of 3 times in those characters, and each time it's been to Murlocs, overwhelming our characters because of respawn and some other things. And the most recent time she got, the second time she was upset and frustrated and wanted to know why, and so we had to sit down and talk about it. So then she became more careful about knowing how to pull, needing to pull things back away from the encampment. So she's learning. It's like the training wheels, you're learning bit by bit how
Hmm.
to do these things because the game is a lot more difficult. But the most recent time, she got mad. Like the third time she died, she got mad and said, this is not cool. Why is this happening? This never happened when we played the retail experience. Why? And I was like, well, that's the major difference, is because the challenge level is higher. So it makes you think about your decision. She's like, well, yeah, because, I thought that I was doing it right because I did this, this, and this. And I was like, yeah, but you didn't, she wasn't paying attention to her mana bar. And so what had happened was we had a big encounter and we were okay, and then we got respawns, but she didn't have enough mana to heal, and so we just got overwhelmed and we both ended up dying. And so now she's also learned that not only do I have to worry about how do I pull and getting too close, but oh yeah, I also have to pay attention to my mana bar because that dictates how survivable my character is. So this might sound silly to you and I, or people who are veteran MMORPG players, but I'm watching someone who I love very dearly, who is literally, a virgin to the MMORPG experience, actually learning it like a child, or like I did back in 1999 with
This
EverQuest,
is
and
amazing.
it is really amazing. It's also a
It's
great.
such a precious experience
It
to be able
is.
to witness that, I think.
I think there's something to be said. I used to say this on my travel blog a lot, which is I have friends who are solo travelers. That's great. I was never a big fan of solo traveling because to me it's like it's really cool to see a sunset. It's even cooler to share the sunset with someone that you care about.
Yeah.
So for me, being able to play a game with someone, this is why single player games will never hold the same level of importance to me as an online game because you don't get to share those experiences, which is also
This is
why
true.
group based gameplay is better than solo gameplay, hands down.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
nice
I
to have
very
things
much
that you can
agree.
do on your own in downtime, but
And
yeah,
I would say one thing about classic and retail, and I really think that the main difference between World of Warcraft retail and World of Warcraft classic is World of Warcraft retail feel more like a game, and World of Warcraft classic feel more like an adventure.
okay, yeah, I can see that. I can also say that this goes back to something where I'll talk about our game just briefly. I think that from day one, we've had a mandate that we're not building a video game, we're building a virtual world. Because I think it's
Mm-hmm.
very important. I talk a lot about immersion, um, especially if you've ever watched, those of you who are listening, if you've ever paid attention to the original episodes of this show, and it was all the blog posts. I mean, we talked about immersion in probably 6 or 7 of the 22 episodes. Um, there is something to be said for a world that can pull you in so that you're immersed enough in that world that it doesn't necessarily feel like a video game. It's, you're watching my wife get upset because her fake avatar in a fake world is dying, and then like starting to develop an actual hatred of Murlocs. It's
Yeah,
like the funniest thing.
and you see, if you had been able to really kill and farm those Murloc camps super easy to get your quest done, etc., you will not have a story to
No,
tell.
nope, you wouldn't.
But here, you failed, you had, and then it's funny. It's an adventure, and it will be a memory for you too that you can tell later,
So
probably.
I think on that note, you just gave us a good closing point, Elloa, which is games that allow you to have adventures and create stories that are worth telling are the games that are really worth playing?
Yep.
Food for thought. So I think as we go into the next episode, we might actually talk about some of the adventures we have had. Maybe we'll
Nice.
find some other adventures people have told from other games. We'll save that for the next episode. So for now, I
Yeah.
want to thank everyone for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell icon if you want to get updates. Thanks again to Elloa, who's now joining us as the
Of
co-host for this
course.
show. We should be going live every Monday, since that's the title of the show, Mondays in MMORPGs. And if you have questions, comments, etc., drop them in the comments below. Any
Or if
final
you have an
thoughts?
adventure to share.
Or,
If
yes,
you have, yeah,
if you have an
share
adventure to
your
share,
adventure there.
let us know, and then we'll bring it up in the next episode and
Yeah.
talk about it in great detail. So, thanks, everyone. We will see
Thank
you in the next
you. Thank you
episode.
to have me. Take care. Bye bye. Have a good day. Good week.